Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World, episode 134. I'm your host, Sean Jordan, and joining me today we have Owen O'Donaghue, who is the co-founder and CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, I'm guessing, of Infinigods. How's it going, Owen?
Hey, great, John. How are you?
Good. I always kind of think if you're the Chief Revenue Officer, that always worries me. Everyone in the company sort of looks at you and so how's revenue going? Well, Owen, how's revenue going?
It's the key thing, you know. It's like, hey, how's the bottom line? How's the top line? And are we making money or not? Can we keep on going? But it's
good. No pressure.
but actually, it's funny because and I think in other companies it's very well defined. In our case, myself and Damon are the co-founders, and it's like, okay, operate across everything. Let's give ourselves some generic titles and just go from there. Focus on building the games, and then worry about revenue and other stuff later.
Yeah, no, it's very, when you're in the startup, it's kind of funny, isn't it? If you don't have some of those sort of positions, and everyone sort of goes, well, why haven't you got one of those? And you're like, well, sort of do everything.
Exactly. We're all utility. Well, I think we're all like utility players, you know.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so we've got plenty to talk about with Infinigods and what you are up to. You're doing a lot of stuff. But before we sort of head straight into that, let's get a bit of background on you, because you've had an interesting history, at least in some of the sort of your previous job before you got into blockchain. So could we get a bit of sort of point history of you in gaming, and then sort of the move to Web3?
For sure, yeah. I spent 15 years in actually technology companies that have turned into gaming roles. Actually, before I joined Facebook early, I was actually at Microsoft, and the first time I ran into really worked on a big game launch. And so, if people and I was pretty much straight out of college, but I joined at a time where Microsoft or Xbox was launching Halo 3. And saw, which was like, by the way, huge. Like was Halo 1 and 2 were huge, and Halo 3 had all the hype and now all the marketing weight behind it, and was actually Microsoft's big bet. This is like pre-iPhone and everything, and so saw how this big brand could be delivered to a big audience, and was obviously fun because I was such a big. I was obviously a big Halo 2 player, actually predominantly before that. But it was just really cool, and hey, that's how games are launched. That's how they're created, and they're these huge, big pieces of IP. And then fast forward to I was fortunate to join Facebook in their European HQ in Dublin when they opened in 2010, really just to try and help figure out what's Facebook's commercial value proposition. At the time, it was very much just where you'd share photos of cats and your babies, etc. And you know, we had a platform that was endeavoring to be like a Microsoft.NET platform, but ended up being taken over by free-to-play games. And I actually then got into the free-to-play gaming world on web, and that was a complete 180 to Halo 3, where it's not this big upfront. This is like the best thing ever. This is like a Hollywood movie. It's like, it's a free-to-play game. We get players in a funnel for a cost, and we see if they retain. And if they retain, we monetize them. And then it's a financial calculation. And it was really interesting because as a gamer, I was more console, PC, huge Championship Manager game, which I know folks in Europe really appreciate. People in the US don't have a clue. And so it was just interesting to see in Facebook we had these super basic game loop type games. So think about Farmville, like very easy, like from a game loop point of view, but incredibly addicting and incredibly monetizing when you started to see the numbers. And so it kind of tripped that finance side of the brain, where it's like, wow, like the games business isn't all showbiz up front. Actually, a lot of it's like a live operations product with people who will really understand that. And that actually really colored my thinking on the industry, and where I spent the last decade with Facebook was building out our business, where we moved from those desktop-based games to actually what's our role in mobile, particularly with Apple and Google Play, it kind of 2011, 2012 taking on, and we shifted into being a provider of organic and paid traffic for games. And actually up until 2022, we were one of the biggest, and I think Facebook still are, Meta rather, are one of the biggest contributors to growth for the majority of free-to-play mobile games out there. So very, very fortunate in that period of time, crossed over from, I was operating in Dublin and London, which is a lot of fun, and crossed over to move into Silicon Valley and the West Coast here in the US, and just started to see how things work in that world. I think what was interesting was getting onto throughout, particularly that decade at Meta, was constantly seeing new business models around gaming come on the scene, and so things like daily fantasy sports were huge in 2014, particularly in the US. So led Facebook's team there. Then we also had in-app advertising, so hyper casual games, which was like dominates the top downloads right now, but was absolutely thought of as a nothing business until 2016, and people figured out they could do ad arbitrage, and created huge companies like Voodoo, AppLovin, etc. have come out of that. So was excited to be part of that. And then we had actually towards the end of the decade, we had cloud and instant games were the hot new thing. And so always was seeing that from the big companies' perspective. But then, started to see blockchain coming on and really felt this was actually something revolutionary. I think like a lot of folks you maybe talked to, 2017, 2018, people are making 100x off buying Bitcoin or Ripple, Litecoin, all the Bitcoin Cash, all this stuff, trading on Polynex. A lot of these things that are now being knocked off. But actually got in there because oh wow, I can make money fast. That's, if we're honest, that's where a lot of people got into it. This is the quick buck mentality, and so that was interesting. But and it kind of went away then for the general public. But then in 2020, we started to see Axie Infinity, started to see Top Shot. We actually CryptoKitties was actually a client at Meta as well, and so what always started to interest was that, where we studied those games, and I say particularly CryptoKitties was actually the more informative one for me, was they had much greater, like if somebody actually owned the asset and there was some sort of value that they could trade outside the game or they could trade it. When we started to see their retention numbers, they were just off the charts. They were way bigger than anything we'd see in free-to-play gaming and even console gaming. And so there's something there. The industry took that and actually decided their financial products over the last 2 years, and everybody created essentially a white paper. Here's an NFT. Here's a token we list, and we somehow keep liquidity into it. You don't know how, but there's liquidity. Don't worry about it. There's ICOs, there's DEXs. I mean, don't worry about it, but there's liquidity, and a market kind of seems to have formed around these things. I think myself and my co-founder Damon, who we should talk about in a second. He's a very successful gaming entrepreneur. We've always looked to do something, and we said, look, that's really interesting the way the market's taking it. There's maybe something there, but we actually fundamentally think this is actually a real big level up for free-to-play gaming, because now essentially people can not only rent stuff from the game developer, they can actually own it. And actually, as a game developer, now you can start to really build scarcity into your games in a meaningful way. And then the second thing is you can actually, I think this is like the real powerful thing we've discovered, especially with our first game, and where we think the future is of the space and why you would even bother building in Web3, building a game, is that if you think about game economies, the last 10 years, particularly free to play, and actually I would say like paid games, it's developer led, it's demand side. You like my game, you want more of stuff, I sell it to you. And actually I can manipulate the prices and all that stuff. And actually that's okay. That actually works. That's very successful. But where we firmly believe blockchain gaming actually adds real value for a gamer, not a speculator, is it says parts of your economy will not be closed. You can actually say only players can actually trade those between themselves. So you can introduce sell-side economics into your economy. And we think that's huge because that actually gets more people involved in the games. Also, from a developer perspective, means you can monetize more players and you can retain them for longer. And so that's a very long-winded answer where it came from and why I got into Infinigods, but maybe helps explain why I passionately believe in this space and where it's going.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's interesting because I say, as sort of said before, I think everyone's sort of moved from sort of they've been in gaming to Web2 gaming to Web3 gaming. Obviously, there's the same sort of pillars or key foundational bits of the technology that we all sort of understand. But I guess everyone's career sort of flavors the particular ones they find particularly interesting. And obviously, you working on that more sort of, I guess, infrastructure ad side, Facebook stroke Meta is sort of has then led into seeing what those early products could do in terms of that sort of data. So you've come at it a slightly different way from someone who's maybe making RPGs all their lives and sees ownership from a different model. So that's sort of now sort of makes me sort of understand a little bit more where you're coming at from Infinigods. But let's sort of dig into that. So Infinigods, you've been going for a couple of years, and I guess what's interesting as a sort of first impressions thing with Infinigods is one, you're sort of very committed to making 3 games, and now you sort of have, I think, one's live, one's sort of in sort of some sort of beta, and one's sort of coming fairly soon. So you've got sort of 3 products that are interlinked, so using sort of a bit of interoperability there. But I guess the other interesting thing is you've taken this sort of overarching sort of narrative stroke art approach, where you're very much into sort of the historical mythology and all that sort of stuff. So I guess there's 2 sort of questions there. So one, let's start with the sort of mythology type stuff. Why do you think that was interesting? And you have these, maybe we're getting too much detail, you have these elder gods, which are your sort of main NFT sort of characters, which are sort of act as boosters. Is that the right way to say it? Anyway, yeah. I'm waffling on there. So let's go with the sort of the art theming sort of stuff first. How did, and I guess that comes into the company because the company's called Infinigods, and the gods are sort of a key part of that. So
yeah, it's actually one of those things. So it's almost like when you look to build any game, forget about Web3. It's like IP can actually help you, and so if you have to build your IP and your lore, it's actually can make it very, very hard actually at times. And so we said, hey, where can we start from an IP perspective, and what's free IP? And so this was one of the categories that came up. And so a lot of people know Zeus and Poseidon, and there's a great, there's kind of a few things like, and again, this was very, I'd say, data focused. It's like, hey, what is something that a lot of people understand, but also can scale globally? Because every single part of the planet has some sort of mythological lore. And we just started with 4, which we think will cover like Europe, US, and Asia at a broad scale, but also allows us, like, I'm Irish, like if we want to go Celtic mythology, if that we can do that, or we want to go something somewhere else, we can do there. And so it allowed us to get that IP so people will know if they play. So if they play, for example, Immortal Siege, which is our tower defense game, they know Zeus will come on, and as they're defending their towers, he'll hit a lightning bolt.
Yes,
so I think it's that the consumer will actually understand very quickly the value of those, and we started with the elder gods really because like that actually sets the stage where, hey, these are the most powerful characters across the universe. You probably all know the names depending on where you come from, and actually, what's funny in mythology, a lot of them have children, or they have other gods, or there's heroes associated, or there's monsters associated. So it's pretty much almost an endless catalog of IP you can roll into your game. Again, where it's Web3 or not. And then the second part is there's frankly an economy of scale. So it's kind of like, look, we're not having to go to the drawing board every time we do a game to figure out, okay, well, what's the scenery? What is the theme? Like there's a big economy of scale. So the games can be completely different genres, but from an art perspective, from even a storytelling perspective, it actually enables us to move much faster. And that probably colors a lot of our decisions. Is we do look at blockchain gaming as being very nascent. And again, going back to, I would say, the Facebook days, it's about like failing fast. It's about shipping product and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and then scaling, what works, etc. And we have 3 games now across the same IP and the same shared mythology. There is absolutely game 4, 5, and 6 in the pipeline.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
6 to 9 month build times. Yeah, because it's like we don't expect all 3 to hit. I'd love if they did, and actually, I think all 3 have unique value propositions where I could see them being top of the app store charts. But the reality, if you've been in gaming for a long time, is that like your first game doesn't necessarily always hit. The example that always stuck with me was actually Supercell and Clash of Clans, because they were a really early Facebook developer we worked with for years, and they spent 2 years and they produced over 70 games where it's prototype or live. and it was game number 71 or something. It was in that range. Was Clash of Clans.
Mm.
So it just goes to show you, like, they didn't hit it from day one. And then it also contrasts to what we see in Web3, where some people were trying to build a AAA game, and and they're getting great pre-sales and that stuff. But it's like even if you make a good game, there's still so many other variables, and so the kind of testing, learning, building, build, learn, test, build, test, learn, rather, is the real motto, and we feel that's the way to go. And any sort of economy of scale in terms of your IP and your art is going to help there. And then obviously having shared NFT assets, we think is also just really cool. We think it's like one of the things we said from the outset is, what are the pillars? Where's the technology really cool for the gamer? And one of the things was, I have this character, or it could be anything else, and it gives me access to do things in other games as well.
Yeah.
And actually, if somebody wants to build a game around those characters, good luck, away they can go. We think that's just really cool. And so we've always stuck to that, and we've always honored that. And our collections are in use across 2 games. We proved that in April, and a 3rd game coming in September.
Mm-hmm. No, as you say, it is an interesting sort of philosophy about how, and I don't think it's sort of one size fits all, but there is this. I guess I think there is, from my point of view, there is sort of one strong argument where it basically goes, you want to have the biggest sort of hit you can and make it the best you can, and sort of the more you can pile into like one product, then the sort of more solid it feels, and the more sort of blockchain sort of fits within it. But equally, as you say, to make a decent game now, you need probably quite a big team and probably tens of millions of dollars, and that takes you 2 years. And so there's this sort of opportunity cost in that.
It's more like 5 years. The AAA stuff is like, we faced it a lot. I think it always, again, particularly at Meta, because we had a lot of console advertisers, but they actually were dwarfed by mobile. And the commercials actually mobile dwarfs as well, which I always find is interesting. Because in the Web3 space, people focus on the AAA stuff. So like think about Star Atlas or Illuvium. The challenge is nobody has ever broken through there in the last 5-6 years, who isn't a big publisher. And so and the build times are 5 years, and the market can move very fast. And that was a big concern, is we had actually debated doing a much bigger Clash of Clans type game at the start, and then we just felt the build time was going to be so long that things could change. And what's funny is, look how things have changed just in a year. In terms of what's accepted from a tokenomics is almost completely done a 180. So I think that was one of the concerns. Now, you still hope the companies who are in that space, we need them to be successful. We need them to deliver product soon. So it's certainly not a knock on them. It's just for us, we're funded, but we're not funded. We don't have 100 million of funding, so we don't have the time to do that. And so we need to operate pretty efficiently.
Yeah. And I think it is one of the nice sort of things with your product. It sort of ticks off this interoperability thing, which, a lot of people, it sort of comes in fashion. And obviously it's one of those sort of tent pegs of blockchain that we sort of sitting in the pub, people get philosophical about, get the right term. And sort of, it's interesting because I think for a lot of people, you can sort of see how it would work, but getting it to work is just like an absolute nightmare. And really, unless at the moment an individual company is building multiple games using that sort of stuff, it's very hard. I mean, I guess Loot is the best example of, it seems that should be great, and people have decent people have tried to do things around it, and it's just not sort of coalesced because it's just not enough force for everyone to do it. And so it is interesting that, I think, there's probably a few others, but you guys are sort of in the vanguard of, we've made 3 games and the same NFTs work in them, and it's a little bit like the audience can sort of choose, and we can see how it works, taking audience from one game to the next game, and
and easier said than done. That's
even in that,
seriously, we even this is where the infrastructure has improved over the last year, which has been great. But in September, for example, on our first game, InfiniMerge, and we've always been we've rolled that product out pretty early on. But even in September, I remember some of the existing solutions for recognizing what's in somebody's wallet and therefore giving them stuff in game. We were having to write code around that to actually augment it. Yeah, and so like that actually takes a lot of time. Making sure they show up in the right format. With things like refresh and cooldown times, so you can use your NFT, but
Yeah.
like it can't be just this infinite, like you just win by using it, every single time. We want to have some balance there, but just getting those things right actually takes a lot of experimentation in there as well. And then, but fast forward to when we did the alpha for Immortal Siege, we only opened it up to our pass holders and some other folks, and like we were able to like identify, if you had over 100 of our assets in your wallet, we were able to identify and like load it up super fast, and like got the content delivery network. So it's funny, all that plumbing. There's a lot of theory out there, and then like when you get into the plumbing, there's just a lot of work you need to build yourself. But again, we've seen that progress on our side and the industry side. So I always like to throw that in because I think every time you go on Twitter Spaces with a lot of folks, there's a lot of great ideas up here, and you're like, oh, yes, I get it. Yeah. Interoperability is one of them. But it's like the plumbing is really hard. Just to be clear, that's why it's taking a while for a lot of games.
And even if I'm right, I'm not quite exactly sure what you had was on chain and off chain, but InfiniMerge, you sort of had these followers that you had an arc that you could sort of take the followers off of, and the arc was an NFT, and I think then you sort of burnt it, and they were probably the followers probably weren't NFTs, but they were sort of bonus items used in the game. So you had a more sort of complex sort of situation than just reading an NFT into a wallet.
Exactly. We looked at essentially the ERC 20 model, which was predominant. Which let's get a brass tacks on it. I launch an ERC 20, probably on a DEX. Somebody sets up liquidity pools, or I do a pre-sale. It gets a price up here.
Yeah.
People can earn it in game, here's what happens. It goes like that. Every single ERC 20 has dropped like that because the amount of speculation that's in there. And so we said that model that model just doesn't feel right for gamers. And we said, look, what are you really trying to do here? And I firmly believe this is the future of the space and where we're on to something that's going to be groundbreaking. And so the idea really with followers and arcs is, if you've something off chain that only players can earn, and they earn through gameplay, so in our case, if you complete a level on InfiniMerge, think about Candy Crush. If you get 3 stars, you get some of these followers, and they're actually power-ups in the game, so you can use them to like help you score more. So people who play just for fun, and we have a lot of players like that, they actually really want followers, but they can never earn enough of them, and we don't sell them direct. So we say, okay, this is now this part of our economy is sell side. And for you to sell that, you do it via our platform. We call it the shipwright. And essentially you bundle up your followers and you sell them to other players. And the bundling is done via an NFT. And the blockchain guarantees you're buying those power-ups. And so think about some examples with, like, I think Diablo did it really well. I think World of Warcraft, where there is some pretty big gray markets around people selling in-game items. We see it with CSGO now and some of the skins. And so there's a lot of trust. If I have a £100,000 skin and John, I'm going to sell it to you and I hope you wire me the money, etc. And like we do that account transfer, there's a lot of trust there. If you say actually blockchain now guarantees that, that's the value. That's the value. And so we firmly believe that if you introduce sell side economics into free to play games, you still keep a lot of demand side in there. You don't need every single item to be sell side. Certainly not yet. The market's not there. Gamers aren't there yet. We think that actually then introduces new gaming behavior. So payers in your game will continue to pay. They'll want that. And they don't really care about like speculation. They don't care about return. They want those items because it helps them be better at the game or achieve whatever they want to do in the game. But then for players, and what we've seen is players who actually, in a kind of a cold way, they're non-payers. So they play our games a lot, but they actually never have bought our Elder Gods or our game passes would give you access to different tournaments, or they've never bought arcs. But for them, they can actually start to go and say, okay, look, I'm playing this game. I like it. But but I can actually trade some of the things I've built up over time, and I can actually, I know other players want them, and so I can actually trade them. And when they actually do that, they go to our platform, they actually pay a mint price to us to mint that. And we've been actually very careful around our economics, where typically over the last 5 months, and we even have like data and curves to prove this, like people will consistently are able to mint it for $10, and they're able to, and this is just the followers and arcs loop, and they're able to sell an arc for an average of $22.
Okay.
And we have payers who want to pay, who value it at that price based off their in-game how they use it in game. And so that for us then opens up, then more people are getting over that psychological hump of actually paying, and now they're participating in the economy. And so then you can start to say, are there more tools that I can actually help give to these players to actually to take more, to actually own more of that? They are now like, it's like Amazon. We sell some stuff, but you also sell some stuff on our platform. Let me give you tools to do more of that so you're successful. And so it starts to open up the economy to those types of behaviors. And InfiniMerge is a perfect little sandbox to showcase it, where we've had a crazy amount of sales, like direct sales, of people buying the gods from us and buying passes from us. But then we've had even almost better traction in people actually doing that in-game trading. And there's no reason why you would buy these apart from if you want to play the game. Yeah. So because they're not an ERC20, it's just a pure in-game bundle. And so that's how we're building all of our games, with those on off-chain to off-chain pairs throughout our games, where players will start to come across places where, hey, there's this thing in game, we can't sell it to you. You're going to need it if you like a certain game mode. And maybe you want to sit there and just grind it out and then sell it to other players. Or if you're a player who wants to monetize, you don't buy it from us. You go to our platform and other players sell it to you. So that's where we see the future of this space.
Yeah. No, I think that's good on two parts. I mean, I think developers are realizing that them not selling things and players doing it amongst themselves is sort of, in a sense, it's the harder role, because that sort of has that market has to sort of, I mean, you can help it a little bit, but that sort of has to kickstart itself. But once that sort of gets going, then I think over time the education sort of becomes, players are sort of happier to buy things off other players. I mean, I think that takes time for them to psychologically become aware of that. But that's sort of nice that I'm trading this with other people who are playing the game. So it's not, I don't think you're an evil developer who's taking money, but some players think that about developers, even if they like the games. But this is just trading among players. And I guess the other thing is, over time, people who don't spend money but are selling, obviously, are then maybe incentivized because they're earning. Then they do become spenders because they're earning, and then they think, well, maybe I'll buy one of these higher level NFTs, which helps me in some other way improve my my other business or something. So there's some interesting sort of things.
And it's a funny gamer behavior that's actually existed even before Web3, like where some players will like hoard resources and then trade within clans and guilds and so on. And so it's really just using that side. But the model itself is very interesting. I think we're already beginning to see it with Mythical and NFL Rivals, which I think is the biggest sleeper Web3 game out there. And again, it's a very simple premise of playing. It's actually a pretty fun game if you like American football. But you essentially get these card packs, you unload them, you get these players, and if you don't want one of those players, you go to the Mythical marketplace and you trade it to other players who maybe want that. That is the future. Like that is, I think, where you get mass adoption and mass scale.
Yeah. Cool. So in terms of obviously you're not going to tell us about games 4, 5, and 6, which are not announced yet. but in terms of sort of where you are for the next sort of 6 months, will you have everything sort of the first 3 games? Will they all be live by then, or how are you sort of working with those?
Yeah, for sure, and probably a bit of alpha as they call it, but we call it a release schedule. So we're going out to the Epic Store with Immortal Siege in September.
Okay.
Which is going to be really fun. Excited. That game will be going on mobile in the November timeframe. But we want to go Epic first. They are just really cool right now, just as a platform. They have very few games and a lot of players, and we think we actually fit very nicely there. Our game King of Destiny, that's going to be also going live in September. I think we'll actually have a playable beta for for a lot of for players before then as well. We already have like test flight. We actually even have a Google Play version that we have about 2,000 testers on. But we don't promote it in the Discord. We have it under a different name and stuff like that. But again, we're just seeing like, how do people interact? What do we need to change? That game is very close to launch as well. And then for InfiniMerge, we're going to keep that going on being browser based for the rest of the year. We're rolling out additional pantheons. We've got some more quests coming out there as well. But with that product, we're intending to take it mobile in Q1, and we will be building in features that will make it more accessible to Web 2 consumers. So you'll still see the same power-ups today, but there'll be other options, other game modes for the mobile gaming consumer. And so pretty much every quarter, we're going with the big launch, and particularly a big mobile launch. And to be very kind of clear, for each of the mobile launches, we have a very distinct growth strategy. So we'll be going out and both through organic and through paid means. We'll be going acquiring players. We'll be acquiring at least 100,000 players per game to understand and actually test our lifetime value versus cost of acquisition. We'll be testing our viral channels. They'll include like Twitter, Discord, but also include things like Facebook Connect. So invite your friends. And we'll be fundamentally understanding, are these games that kind of, build, learn, iterate? Is it like keep them going, like scale like crazy, which again is like 99 out of 100 of the top games uses this strategy. We're doing the exact same playbook here. If that looks good, keep it going. If it looks okay, make some changes. Keep testing while it's live, and then see if you hit that tipping point, or if it's just actually not hitting any of those metrics, you essentially put it in harvest mode, so you don't actually commit to doing too much more content, and you keep it there on the various stores. So we're not trying to promise everything is going to be like a huge success. We have tried to make sure every single game, though, if they had nothing Web3, that there's something unique about it. And so I think Immortal Siege is a great one on that. So if this was a pure Web 2 game, we'd be saying this is tower defense, but with deck building mechanics. And it's like, because it's always been traditional tower defense with, just placing your towers. Now it's like you got another choice. You got a set of cards. You need to figure out when you want to play them. You've got 10 minutes to defend. How are you going to play this? And so even on that side, we look for those unique differentiators. But we also build in like a lot of the trusted systems that we know have worked in similar games as well. To help players retain, help them keep coming back, and if they do that, then they're more than likely start to monetize in some fashion.
So it seems from what you're saying is you are pretty positive around app stores as being the distribution channels, despite all this sort of still somewhat uncertainty about certainly Apple and how it's allowing people to use NFTs, and we've still not very clear that a lot of the apps are actually not clear to me at least that a lot of the apps that are on the App Store that using NFTs are using them in a way that is compliant with their terms and conditions.
Yeah, I have a long history dealing with Apple from Facebook, and obviously things went to an interesting head there a few years ago. But to be fair to Apple and to Google Play, and we had this at Facebook with a lot of new categories, including we call it crypto gaming at the time, is like you are trying to protect the consumer. And so one of the and by that it's like if there are, for example, what Apple don't like is if there is like an app on there, and it could be crypto or it could be one of these kind of cash type payday loan apps, unregulated real money apps, some of the skill based apps. Apple is like saying, hey, if I allow you to download this via my own channel, and you end up losing a lot of money for something that's unregulated by your policymakers, we're actually liable for that. And actually, it's just not a good experience, and people can fall to that. And so, Apple and Google Play and Facebook actually have all really took a view of, look, anybody who's coming with you earn a token through gameplay, they've pretty much said no. Like that feels very unusual to us. And the other piece is they don't want experiences gated by NFTs. So only people with NFTs can actually essentially play the games. Unless you could, and by the way, the provision is if you can buy them via Apple, then it's okay. And so there's some models, like we mentioned, NFL Rivals. They have a working model that's scaling on mobile as well. I think we've seen the adjustments in Axie Origins, which is very interesting. So you actually get 3 Axies for free. I think that's a great example of Sky Mavis meeting Apple halfway. And then I think there's games like Upland, which I'm not sure it's necessarily a game, but that's been live on the App Store for about 2 years. And again, you can buy their in-game currency on their website, or you can buy it via Apple. Obviously, Apple or Google Play, there's a 30% tax on that. And you can go and actually buy things that are non-fungible tokens on the US blockchain. And so it's really playing it. I think you need to like play with the platforms. Like, I think you need to like be there. Going web only, if we look at the last 2 years of Web3 gaming, particularly since Axie has really died down, we're thinking and DApp Radar shows it, there's maybe 700 to 800,000 unique active wallets playing every day. And they also do a lot of double counting. So if you have 2 wallets playing 2 different games, you count it as 2, but it's just one real person. So we've seen with the browser game-based market, it's tiny for Web3. And then in general, the browser-based market is about 1%. I think it's about 2 billion in terms of payments forecast in 2023 out of it'll be close to 180, 190 billion market overall for gaming. So you need to be where people are and where gamers are, and you need to have a model that actually makes it easy for them to participate too.
Cool, good. No, that all makes sense. And as you say, there's sort of, I think this year there's sort of people are sort of finding their way, and they're finding their way with Apple, and they're trying to see if Google is is that the same, or is Google being a bit more open, and so there's all that sort of leverage that people are looking for.
They're definitely more open. It's interesting. Yeah, they're definitely more open. I don't want to say it's a tick box, so you do get an extra review, but the process is a bit easier with Google Play. They have a system set up. I think the other thing is that Google Play, for all the one of the big issues with mobile gaming people have had is from a business side is user acquisition has become very hard. That's only been on Apple. Google Play. Essentially developers still have the same level of targeting that they've always had. And in fact, there's more devices using Google Play, etc. now. So Google have always been more open, and it's funny. Some of their team members, you'll actually start to see their advisors here and there. We've run into a few Google Play folks who are like very heavily involved in Web3. And so that's always good for the ethos of how they'll approach a new industry like blockchain gaming.
Yeah, cool. Lovely, good. Well, we will keep our eyes open for your quarterly launches and see how you get on leveraging App Store. That'll be fascinating.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your time, Owen. That was really good.
Thanks so much, John. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. And if you or any of the listeners want to try any of our games, we'd be delighted to set them up.
Cool, good. Well, there you have. They have your. How should they find you? Straight to the Discord, I imagine.
Yeah, straight to Discord, to the Infinigods Discord, or probably the best way is find us on Twitter. So it's twitter.com/Infinigods. And we're always producing new content, new updates there as well, and always excited to welcome new members.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you to you for watching or listening to the podcast, wherever you are consuming it. Every episode, we're talking to the people who are building out this crazy, exciting, I think, and very innovative new sort of form of gaming, which is, hopefully takes the best bits of gaming that we've known for the last 35 years and is bringing these new, interesting models to make something sort of totally innovative and fascinating. So please subscribe to the channel and come back next time. See you then.